Hey guys, we're going dramatic today. The Xero PS5 controller. Now, there's two reasons why you may have clicked on this. Reason number one, you're curious, and I'll feed that curiosity as efficiently as I can. Number two, you're thinking of buying this controller, and let me reiterate, please don't. I didn't know really how to approach this video. I did have communications about 2 months ago on this controller because I did not want to make a review on it because I knew what to expect the moment I powered it on. For the sake of respect, because I'm not trying to be disrespectful towards companies, I'll leave those communications for myself. But in a nutshell, this controller is extremely hard to recommend. So let's just power through this. It was sent for review. That has no impact on my opinions. No money changed hands, and they see the video at the same time as everybody else. Some extra buttons, and it retains pretty much all the features of the PS5 controller minus the adaptive triggers, haptic feedback, the HD haptic feedback. You do have rumble motors, but just not the same quality as the DualSense. No manual, rather, here's your manual. Membrane button, membrane D-pad, membrane shoulders. It's a little bit stiffer, still very silent. Your Hall effect sticks, they do grind a little bit on the edges. No metal on the stems or no anti-skid on the controller. You have your home button, you have the mute just like the regular PS5, a trackpad, a 3.5mm jack for your headsets, triggers, and 2 back paddles. You have some rubber grip here. A little bit of steep corners at the edge of those rubber grips. Same goes here. The plastic feels cheap, but as a whole, where your hand is gonna land, it's gonna be where they put the focus. So for example, you have a nice texture here on your triggers. Same goes with the shoulder buttons. Then you have this kind of rubber, not too sticky. Actually feels good. In terms of just holding it, like if you touch these parts, it feels cheap. But when you hold it like this, it actually feels decent in terms of quality. Then you do have the texture on the trackpad, which is probably the highest quality piece of the entire controller. The parts you touch less feels cheap. The parts you touch most have some extra effort to feel better. Now, there's something I gotta say. This comes from a company called Codejunkies. From what I understand, is a subsidiary of Dattel, which is a company that I knew from even when I was a kid selling peripherals for game consoles. The person that I communicated to on email, I'm pretty sure is the CEO or owner of that company, which so happens to be the CEO and owner of Dattel as well, at least if I'm going by name. I had a pleasant conversation with this person. That never was the issue, and that's essentially what triggered me in the first place to give them a heads up. I thought I was dealing with a mom and pop shop. Definitely not a mom and pop shop. That's a huge company or conglomerate. In fact, Dattel was even sued by Sony Corporation in 2014 or 2015, but that was dropped recently for something along the lines of a Game Genie. I don't know what it's called these days, but it was the same kind of thing that Sony had sued them for. Anyways, all that to say, it seems this comes from a company that has the resources to make a good product. So let's go to my PC and see what came of it. Starting with the typical audio test. Stick tremor, yes, we have it on this controller, and I even had instances where it caused issues, such as in RetroArch. No axis snapping, that was good. Stick snapback is present. The circle is raw, which I personally prefer, but inconsistent in its readings, most likely because I would assume they are cheap Hall effect sensors. There's pretty much no perceivable inner dead zone, which can be good in some instances. Not much gap dead zone either, seemed pretty linear. And little to no outer dead zone either. That was pretty much good all over. Stick tension sat at pretty much 55 TGF, give or take, 55, 60 in that range. And your stick resolution is exactly like the native PS5 controller, which is 0.0078. The diagonal focus of your D-pad was overall disappointing, not really something I would consider good. The rolling test was overall pleasant. The part that wasn't is the overall shape of the cross, which is inconsistent between arrows. As you can see here, it does not sync all the way on the left arrow, whereas it does on the right arrow. And so this is something that can also be observed on the up and down. The D-pad just feel inconsistent, which can kind of trick your brain in wondering if you pushed it all the way down. This is not a proper 4-way D-pad, but it was extremely hard to do adjacent directions, and the accidental inputs test came out pretty good overall. There is a proper center pivot, one that you can push down without actuating any key, and you can also actuate all 4 pretty much from the center as well due to the center pivot. Okay, the start dead zone of your trigger was where it started going very weird. The ramping up of that trigger is completely inconsistent. Sometimes it would ramp up super quick, sometimes it would feel a little more linear, and whereas there was dead zone at the start, there wasn't really all that much at the end of your actuation. There's definitely dampening on your triggers, and there are no hair trigger types on this controller. Okay, so I did something extremely unusual. I did only 1 run of aim labs. At first I was like, you know what, there's potential here, it's decent. But what stopped me is just very inconsistent behavior from the sensor. There were times when it would just ramp up out of nowhere, and there were times when there were also signal drops. And the most flagrant time being right now. Look how I keep pushing my stick and nothing happens on the screen. If you're motivated, you can even spot more times in the first 30 seconds of my run where that happened, but let's just move to the next game. After working the settings for it to work in RetroArch, I was finally trying Street Fighter, and for the most part, I mean, it's not the worst, it's not the best. I'd say about 60% of successful inputs. The other 40%, I thought I had the move down, but it just didn't happen. Celeste started with the missed diagonal this one, and I just keep getting tricked by that D-pad because I feel like I've pushed it all the way down, but I didn't, so I had to like overexert my pressure just to make sure that I'm really pushing both arrows at a time. But if I did, it was working fine. It's that not fully repressed D-pad in some arrows and not so much in others that just made it a very unpleasant outcome. And lastly, I actually spent more time in run than usual because the thing is that D-pad, it feels like it has potential, but there's just a little bit of mishaps in the physical aspect to it. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, but that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. But the feel of the plastic, the shape, and the fact that it's using a super soft and silent membrane is definitely not unpleasant. So if you don't mind for the inconsistency in the physical notion, you may actually get a decent enough experience out of that D-pad, but I wouldn't say that it's worth spending the money specifically for that. There are better options on the market if you're really just looking for something that is good in terms of the D-pad. I can't be more honest than what I'm about to say. At that point in the video, my brain had clocked out. I just wanted to get it done. When I played Pocket Cars, I thought it was actually fun. I enjoyed myself, so whatever I saw when testing the triggers did not come through. I was just not paying attention. I was just enjoying the game. And performance also turned sour, but not for the reason you might expect. So I could only test cable. No matter how hard I tried to connect through Bluetooth on PC, on iPhone, on Android, the only place it would actually work was on PS5, and only after connecting the cable when doing the operations as per Codejunkies manual, which is the same as the DualSense, to put it into pairing, it just wouldn't work. It would give me that still blue light and nothing would happen, nothing would come up on Bluetooth, so I could just not connect it anywhere else outside of the PS5, and we'll talk about that very shortly. But before we do, even when looking at wired, it did work on PC and iPhones, but it did not work on Android for some reason, so I couldn't test if remote play was going to work with this controller. And before moving to the conclusion is your latency. If for some reason after seeing this video you still want to buy this controller and you expect to only use it wired, you're taking a hit on quality, you're paying a bit less, and you do have extra paddles and Hall effect sticks if that's really important for you. Now, the issue with this controller and what I think is just unacceptable is really the Bluetooth performance. Now, I couldn't test this on PC, but I know for a fact after testing it on PS5 that this will drop signal. Even wired, that I did not expect when I was doing aim labs where it just lost the signal a couple of times. I did not expect to see that. That said, I will say I have not experienced that when using wired on the PS5, only when using it on the PC. It's essentially what you'll feel. It's little drops in signal, and if you're sensitive to that, especially if you play competitive games, stay away from this. Spend the extra money and get the one from Sony. It's far superior in quality. You also won't run into potential issues because if you don't know, this is not official for the PS5, which means that if Sony finds a way to block this controller out of their system, it will stop working. So you will spend £45 for something that does not work. And I went to the website where they say that there are some times when the controller may not work and that you'll need to update software, and a link to the software, which leads to nothing. So it doesn't give me any type of insurance that this company will continue to support you, the buyer, if you do buy their products. And this is why I made a PSA. I just don't trust that they'll have your back. And so I will. And that's why I'll let you know, please don't buy this. You will probably regret it down the road if you do. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't want you to take the risk knowing that they are not making the effort at this point in time to give you the things necessary to fix your controller if you have an issue. If there's something that happens with your controller, somehow there's a glitch in the code, why is it that there's not a link that I can download some kind of software to update this controller? To me, that speaks volume. Most people wouldn't know this, but if you know, and I know, if you're trying to play your PS5 with a non-licensed controller, you need to bypass Sony's verification mechanism. Now, there's a chip in the controller also to prevent that, so I would assume that this controller has a chip, but that does not mean that Sony is not able to detect what they would consider, Sony would consider, a counterfeit product. Maybe I'm just this guy that goes a little too deep when it comes to understanding how it ticks, but as someone who does, this is not a product I would feel good standing behind. There are questionable practices from what I've seen, and I simply would not recommend it. And so thank you very much for clicking and watching on the video. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the comment box. Consider hitting a like if you enjoyed this content and to subscribe to not miss any future one. I'm Clef. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.